Welcome back, soon to be Dr. Milo Wolf here with Wolf Coaching, and today let me put on my hat of +5 weaponsmithing as we review and react to current events in the fitness industry. Specifically, let's talk about Sam Sulek, currently quite a phenomenon within the fitness industry, getting a lot of views without much clickbait. Very interesting. But what about his training? Is it any good from a sports science perspective? That's what we're here to discuss today. So without further ado, let me break down one of his leg days and review if, from a sports science perspective, it's any good. Now, this video is 36 minutes long, so I'm not going to watch all of it. However, I will be watching the workout portion of it.
What I'm going to do for biceps. Tries have my complete focus, 100% attention. Right. Same with hamstrings. So let's just quit talking and get this cut started. Holy shit.
So this is Sam Sulek's first day of the cut, apparently, where he's training legs.
I'm not going to try to, honestly, if I were to just jump straight into hamstrings after not hitting them for a fucking while and like try to warm up to the whole stack, I'm not going to say it's a guarantee, but I'd be more than likely to fucking pull my shit. And that's the last thing you want. So instead of starting off with some heavy shit on the, seated leg curl, I like this kind of jerry-rig style single leg standing leg curl. You may need to put like a fucking plate or something underneath your feet just so that your knee is at like this height. You kind of just have to fucking try it, but I'll start off with a couple sets of just, relatively light squeezing sets and then move on to whatever else.
So Sam may or may not have a point here. Maybe after you haven't been lifting for a while, you don't want to just jump into the longest muscle length training ever. And there is some evidence around warming up preventing injuries. To what extent it plays a role within lifting weights is somewhat unclear, but I think it's worth being cautious, and especially if you haven't trained hamstrings in a while, which from the sounds of it he hasn't, might be worth going a bit slower. And sounds like he's doing just that, which is very good. So technique on these standing leg curls is a bit questionable. Yes, he's getting a full lockout on the knees and getting a deep stretch in the hamstrings at the bottom, as much as he can anyways, but it's not very strict, and he's not exactly going close to failure either. I think for maximum growth, it might be worth going a bit closer to failure. Here, it didn't really look like his form really broke down at any point. It was just consistently not great. It had some body English all throughout, but otherwise, besides the body English and the slightly rushed eccentric, pretty solid. Nothing too much to explain about that. Again, if I were Sam, I would just slow down the eccentric a little bit, reduce body English slightly potentially, maybe potentially actually slightly increase the height of the boxes. Currently it looks like the pad is kind of hitting his mid-lower leg. Ideally, you want the pad to be just against your sort of Achilles heel, right? Or sort of the rear of your foot. It looks so high that it's difficult to get a full range of motion if that's something he wants to do, so I'd consider putting the pad a little bit lower.
I've had enough of this. Let's do some normal leg curls. Not gonna go crazy with the weight. Only a little more than half the stack. Same thing, you can do slow-ish controlled reps.
Yeah, these are not slow-ish controlled reps. Whatever you say, they're just not slow controlled reps. Also, real quick, doing 2 types of leg curls in the same session probably isn't the best use of your time. Unless you're training hamstrings once every 2 weeks and you really need to hit your hamstrings perfectly, which is not the best strategy anyways. Training a muscle group at least twice a week is better for muscle growth than training it once a week. And so if you're training hamstrings twice a week, you really don't need to be doing seated leg curl, lying leg curl, standing leg curl, all in the same session. It's just not necessary. They all accomplish, broadly speaking, the same goal. Is there a point to having some variation across the week? Yes, absolutely. The lying leg curl, for example, could target the sartorius and the gracilis a little bit better, whereas the seated leg curl could be targeting the hamstrings themselves a little bit better. But equally, they're just not that different to the point that it makes sense to include both of them within the same session. You're getting a lot of overlap for not any additional benefit. So I really like that Sam is leaning forward in the seated leg curl right here. What this does is by increasing the degree of hip flexion, you're actually lengthening the hamstrings, at least 3 of the 4 heads, even more. And so as far as stimulating growth within the hamstrings, A seated leg curl where you're sort of bending forward is some of the best hamstring training you can possibly do.
Change it up a little bit, but same fucking machine. Instead of doing both legs at once, I'm just gonna finish off with 2 sets of single leg.
Yeah, so single leg hamstring curls are absolutely fine. There's nothing inherently special about them, but they do allow you to just isolate each side a little bit better. And so if you have any sort of imbalances, or if you want to prevent imbalances, including some single leg and some single arm work within your training routine is a good idea. What I would like to see Sam do, even on these single leg curls, is to just control the eccentric a little bit more and potentially pause in that fully stretched position before curling it back down.
Hamstrings are now sufficiently pumped.
Hamstrings are sufficiently pumped.
Grabbing them. Ooh. Dude, holy shit. Like, I can feel them like touching in between. Nice. Similar approach to quads. I'm not going to start off with crazy heft. I'm going to do lightish weight, single leg, slow controlled reps, really squeeze.
Again, nothing wrong with single leg work. Prevents imbalances potentially, reduces existing imbalances.
Because typically what I do is I start off super heavy, fatigue the fuck out of my whatever muscle I'm hitting, and then at the end, lighten the weight and do slower squeezing reps.
Real quick, I don't really like the leg extension. I think it's a fine option if you're looking for a quad exercise that doesn't load the spine, that you can do for high reps without being limited by your systemic fatigue. But equally, it trains the quads at very short muscle lengths. You can't get a full stretch at the bottom of a leg extension, nor does it load the quads very well in that lengthened position, in that bottom position. In fact, it does the opposite. It loads the quads most heavily when the quads are most shortened, which is the opposite of what we want for hypertrophy, as I described in this video about longer muscle length training. So Sam has his feet oddly close together when he does leg extensions. That's not beneficial, nor is it necessary. It's likely going to accomplish largely the same thing, whether you get your feet together or a bit further apart.
Let's go do something else.
I agree. Let's go do something else. You've done only isolation exercises so far for the quads and hamstrings, so let's go do something else. To his credit though, having both a knee extension and knee flexion exercise within your routine is something some strength-focused bodybuilders don't really do, and is definitely undervalued. A knee flexion exercise, like a leg curl, will actually train one head of the hamstrings, the short head of the biceps femoris, that hip extension exercises like the RDL or the good morning just won't do. And so if you don't include a leg curl, you'll be missing out on growth in that one area of the hamstrings. Likewise, if all you do are compounds for your quads, there's actually one head of the quad, the rectus femoris, that doesn't really get trained very well when you're just doing squats or leg press or hack squat or any sort of compound exercise where it's being lengthened at the hip while being shortened at the knee.
A bit of inspiration from a very well-known Jay Cutler workout video. So,
about to do some front squats, I take. Very cool.
I wanted to try some fucking Smith machine.
Respect. Nothing wrong with that.
I've literally never.
What you need to realize about Smith machine front squats is that they're very awkward to unrack.
Oh, I don't want to go too crazy. I've never done this, but I think 2 for a solid set.
2 plates should be quite light for young Sam. So he seems to be training with sort of constant tension once again. What I would do if I was him is, again, slow down the eccentric, because as much as he says they're controlled reps, they're really not controlled. Slow down the eccentric, pause at the very bottom, get a full deep stretch. He can definitely go lower than what he is here. And at the top, he can still skip the lockout. It doesn't really matter for hypertrophy. In fact, there's some evidence that lengthened partials are better than full range of motion reps. So the top is fine. And then he appears to be supersetting it with some sissy squats, some very shallow ones. Now, for most growth, I would go a lot deeper than what he is doing here. A lot deeper.
Again, but I'm getting a lot of glutes, and I'm trying to destroy my quads.
Yeah.
Let's go back to leg extensions.
So the reason Sam might be getting a lot of glutes here is because he actually pre-exhausted his quads doing leg extensions. And so his glutes are kind of untapped, right? Like there's kind of true trains of thought when it comes to pre-exhausting. Number one is that by pre-exhausting the quads, you then go into front squats and you feel your quads a lot more and they're a lot closer to failure and so forth. However, by the same token, you could argue that, well, because your quads are fatigued, your body's going to shift more of the overall demands of the exercise towards other muscle groups, like the glutes. And so potentially the reason he's feeling his glutes here is because the body has said, well, your quads are tired, let's shift the work towards the glutes instead. More leg extensions. Honestly, no. Stop doing leg extensions, please.
I gotta get home because it is fucking late. I gotta go to bed and get up for cardio in the morning before my 8:30, goddammit.
Did he just do a leg session composed of leg extensions, leg curls, a different kind of leg curl, and finally like one set of front squats?
Let's see what that looks like.
Very cool legs.
Okay.
He's famous on TikToks, I hear.
Let's see the side.
Nice legs, bro. What can I say? I'm not sure if Sam's actually competing in bodybuilding, but he's looking pretty jacked, you know?
In the coming weeks, should start to see a bit more shit going on down here, right? Because obviously right now they're fully pumped, so worst case scenario for striations and
That is very true. The more pumped your legs are, generally, the less striation you'll see, the fewer separations you'll see. And generally, this is why backstage, if you ever go to a bodybuilding show, you won't see competitors often pump up their legs. It's because A, it makes sort of poses harder to maintain, like when you're hitting a front double biceps. Flexing your quads becomes quite hard when they're pumped. And additionally, when they're pumped, they just don't quite look as defined or as shredded. And so it's worth usually avoiding this.
I would say it was a fucking success.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I'd call it a success. I don't think it was a terrible session, but you could tell it was kind of half-assed in a way. Like it was kind of, oh, what do I want to do? I'll do this. Which is fine. If you train to enjoy your training, then do whatever you enjoy, I suppose. But equally, a session composed of almost exclusively leg extensions and 2 different kinds of leg curl, just not the best leg session. The adductors and the glutes just didn't get much training in. Now, I'm pretty sure this isn't how Sam usually trains his legs. If it is, then Jesus Christ, dude has great genetics. But as far as training went, it's a 5, you know? There's a few things about his technique that I'd improve, like controlling the eccentric a bit more, going a lot deeper, and that sort of stuff. But overall, it's not terrible. He trained reasonably close to failure for the most part. Generally, he was getting reasonably deep on most things and getting long muscle lengths on most exercises, although he could still go deeper. But the biggest issue to me was just the exercise selection. You're not going to get your best growth doing a few leg extensions, a few leg curls, and calling it a day, pretty much. Anyways, that's my review of Sam Sulek's leg day. If you liked the video, please comment, like, subscribe. Let me down in the comments below who else you want to see me review as far as their training, their nutrition, breaking it down as a sports scientist. Come back next time as we break down more science and more people's training. Peace!